Cat is under the weather, so you're going to have to put up with me.
Wow, Chuck Brown.
Yeah. I think they knew me or something. We're here to talk about books. Have any of you ever wondered why all of a sudden we don't recognize the society we're in? That things are changing in ways that don't make any sense to us, and that certainly with the younger generation there seems to be a massive disconnect. Our values and theirs are so completely different. There's a reason for all that. Have you ever wondered about the possible influence of our petrodollars? What effect it might have on our educational system? For example, charter schools are sponsored very largely by the Turks. And just so happens that Turkey is a Muslim country. Did you know, for example, that Judaism has been eliminated from some textbooks as a major religion, world religion? And that terms that we grew up with are being abandoned and other terms are being put in their place. For example, do you remember ever studying about Eurocentrism or Afrocentrism? Did you ever think about, did you ever get lessons in revisionism, critical thought, indoctrination, proselytization? Have you ever associated Buddha with Jesus? There are so many things that have been distorted. Terms that we didn't use when we were young, like racism. We had racism, but not the way it's being used today. Globalism has become a big issue. We didn't have globalism when we were kids. We had being an American. Dr. Sandra Alfonsi has done a lot of research into what's going on in our textbooks, how it's being used to distort the communication between generations, and how the heritage, the Judeo-Christian heritage that we inherited is being lost. She's done a great deal of research in it. She's part of the Truth in Textbooks effort, and I'd like to turn it over now to Dr. Alfonsi.
First of all, I'll say good evening to you, and it's good. I recognize some of you from last year when Kat brought me over to speak to you, and if Ken hadn't stopped, I would be able to sit down because he's given you half of my speech. And I don't make speeches. I have notes, so you shouldn't worry about the paper that's here. It's just that we have only so much time, and I want all of you to understand that you live in the state, the only state in America that is backing the work that we do. I am very happy to be the Senior Academic Fellow for Truth in Textbooks, and that is my guiding light, my fighter pilot over there, Roy White, who really has conceived this and drives it and makes me stay fresh on the work, I think is the best way to say it. And I come to Texas for revitalization, because I also know that when I live in Israel now permanently, I live in Jerusalem, and last year, November, Roy said they need you at the State Board of Education in Austin to speak to one thing that CARE was trying to do, removing something from the TEKS, and he brought me out there. I came with him, and at the end of the day, your State Board of Education and your state of Texas, and since I was born in Washington, D.C., so I've been stateless all my life, so now I am a Texan. So our State Board of Education we won the vote 11 for and 4 against, and we've kept everything with even stronger language in the TEEX. And that is why I come to Texas, because I know that I call it my audience, my friends from Texas who come to hear this really want to know what it is, and I really honestly want to tell you what it is, because it's beyond saying, oh, we're in a mess. It's beyond saying. I prepared this list, what I call troubling trends in American education. I learned last year when I came to San Angelo for the first time, and I had prepared to speak about different textbooks, and Kat said, you can't do that. So I said, well, why not? She said, our parents don't have access. Our parents don't know what textbooks are being used. Our parents don't know what the curriculum is. And I said, how is that possible? This is the United States, it's Texas, it's San Angelo, and it's a violation of law. And so I prepared, these troubling trends, and this is what I worked with when I spoke last year on the troubling trends. The worst thing that has happened is that there are more now this year than last year. But because of working with Ken Casper here, he just, without asking me, which I thought was wonderful, he sent an email to your superintendent of education, and instead of a negative answer, he got a positive answer, and he wants to speak with me, with his curriculum chair, and I will finally get access to the textbooks and the names of the books before the purchase, because what's important with Texas, it's the state textbook adoption process, and it's number 2 because of the number of children that we educate in this state. So Ken took a chance, and afterward he said, I hope you don't mind. I said, it's wonderful. So the date where I should have met with him, with the superintendent, he has his new teachers coming in, the curriculum. I said, it's no problem. I said, as long as I know what time it is in Texas, when I'm in Israel, and I know what time it is in both places, I said, we will do either a telephone conference call or a video call, and your superintendent here wants to do that with his curriculum chair and give me access to your books. So this is the first time, but this is what happens in Texas. Sometimes it's big things, sometimes it's little things, but in today's education world, nothing really is little. And when you have a city and you have parents and grandparents and interested people not knowing not only what's in the books, but what books we're talking about, we are looking at something that is agenda-based. It's not a mistake. There's something that is being hidden. There's something that's being implemented. And this is what I really want to talk to you about tonight, is to give you an idea of where this is coming from, because it didn't happen yesterday, it was here last November. So it happened before last November. But I start out with the first thing that is important to me, which is the minimalization of the Judeo-Christian tradition of America. That is critical to me, because when we lose that, we lose our ethics, we lose our morality, we lose the Bible. And to me, the Bible is the Bible, whether we call it the Hebrew Bible, the Christian Bible, the Old Testament, New Testament. To me, it's the Bible and it's God. And this minimalization of the Judeo-Christian tradition, the founding fathers were wise enough to know that you had to impart and put in at least some guide for the morality and the principles of the land. And now we are not only having it minimalized, but thanks to a professor who's totally warped. And I'm a university professor, so I think it's my right to say when another one is totally warped. And his name is Professor John Esposito. He's from Georgetown University, and he introduced that this country is based upon the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition. And it came out in the foreword of one of Pearson Prentice Hall's textbooks. And this is what has imploded upon us, because if you look at step by step, the Islamization of the textbooks, the Islamization of our business places, how many times a day we now are reading that prayer places, Islamic prayer places are being provided so they can pray 5 times a day. But if our Christians walk in with crosses on, which should be their right, or my Jewish students and then walk in with the skull cap on, or they walk on, I mean, I wear my little tiny little Jewish star, not out of fear, or I'm trying to hide it, but because when I was born, my mother put it on me the day I was born, and it will go, whether people like it or not, with me to the other side. And I'm saying this is, we are a Judeo-Christian nation. And if we are not, we have no guidelines for ethics and morality in life, in business, in how we treat each other. And the civility, we've always had tensions between religions and tensions between colors in this country. People are human, but we had a type of civility mandated in our homes and in our schools, and that was based on religion. That did not mean, and it does not mean that we were bringing different religions into the school. We were keeping at least a profile available. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag taught and should teach loyalty to America. And we need to teach that. And the Pledge of Allegiance is something that I grew up with as a child in school. And we were what I call mixed. We were different religions, different races. Well, actually, we were just 2, Caucasian and black, because that was Washington, D.C. But we had all of this, and we had the Pledge of Allegiance, and because we were mixed religions in my school through Washington, D.C., they did the 23rd Psalm, so it was praying and it was God every day, but it was not imposing any religion on anyone, and yet we had spirituality and patriotism the beginning of every day. And that is what is happening when you minimalize the Judeo-Christian tradition and this country, and the rise in anti-Semitism in this country is frightening. But one of the other things that is equally frightening and that we are not concerned about, and more and more I try to bring this message, is there isn't a quote-unquote anti-Christianism, like you say, anti-Semitism, but there has to be. We have to make sure that we speak about the anti-Christian movement in this country, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be in the school system, whether it be in the celebration. And I do believe that the celebration of our religion and our ethnicities are really critical and crucial to the survival of the country. So this goes with it. Now, Ken made reference to my second one, which is the disappearance of Judaism as a world religion from the textbook. And it was in the Pearson textbook, which I will talk to you about and speak to you about in a few minutes. So I called Roy 2 years ago, and he remembers. I said to him, Roy, we're going into stage 3 of this, this is, my sinuses react to the humidity. So it's nothing personal, but it won't stop. So it's just dripping. So, there's a little bit dropped down the back of my throat. I called him 2 years ago because I'm going to speak to you in about 3-4 minutes about what I call the master Arab plan, with the first money that came in from Saudi Arabia, where all of this was formalized. So in there, I said to Roy 2 years ago, we've reached stage 3. Judaism as a world religion is going to be demoted, and as soon as that is done, we will be looking at the onslaught against Christianity. And the reference that Ken made to Jesus and the Buddha is probably the most frightening development that I have seen in the textbooks today, and I will talk to you after we finish removing Judaism as a world religion, and that we finish decimating the Jews as people and remove them from American society. We will then turn to what is in another textbook, and we will be able to see where we are and why we should be very aware and not just shrug and say, so what? I spoke last Friday during a Sabbath dinner in Houston, And the flippancy with which I was greeted with certain of my remarks, well, so what? I said, you know what? This is why when you open your door and you put your head out and you have your yarmulke on your head, you are likely to be attacked. There's no flippancy on this. You have to understand that we are under attack. And the best way to attack guns and such, that's not the way to attack, because God willing, thank God we have security here, but we do have police force, we do have the army, we can declare martial law, but no one is looking at the textbooks. And the textbooks are the finest way to destroy civilization. Some of these books are 8th and 9th, into their 8th and 9th edition. So you have to know how many generations, and if you don't understand, when I say you, it's generic, it's just a word. If you don't understand by the number of editions and number of publications, and you wonder, who is teaching this? So my answer is, the last generation that studied from the same books, and then went from the schools into college, and some went to teachers' colleges, some went to education, and that is why this is morphing so quickly, because it's very old. I mean, I've been doing this more than 20 years, so it tells you how long the problem existed. But the severity is because there's tremendous money, there's a tremendous, there are forces that are anti-American, that are anti-democracy, that are anti the Constitution, that they're communists, they're Marxists, and they are Islam. They are Islamists. There's a difference between being a Muslim and being an Islamist. And an Islamist is one who wants to impose all of the tenets of Islam on, first we're dealing with America. But if you look at their vocabulary, they are saying, they being the Islamists, that they are reinforcing and they're reestablishing, is actually their verb, they're reestablishing the caliphate. But they're not. They are doing now what they failed to do. They invaded Western Europe. They invaded Spain. They were removed from there. Their caliphate never went into the Western world. They never were given the chance to conquer and to come over here and then go to Latin America. So when they say they are reestablishing, they will reestablish the caliphate in the Middle East, which is why there is absolute slaughter and decimation in the various Arab countries where the non-Muslim populations live. So we have this. We have Judaism followed by Christianity, the assault on Judaism and Christianity has to be followed by one thing, which is the whitewashing and the sanitization of how Islam is presented in the schools and in our textbooks. Because we are looking at people, I'm amazed, and I admit it, I have never seen such skillful brainwashing. And I never understood, when I was with Roy in Austin in November, I know what's in the books, I know how to read it, I've seen it, but I have never heard it before. And I was faced by a Palestinian who got up in front of the board to talk about 800,000 refugees that were driven out of the nascent state of Israel. And I listened to him, and I had this vision of a snake charmer with a big basket, and this very, very honey-like mellifluous voice speaking about what was done to him and his family. And I had the vision of this snake coming out of the basket. And I said, there, I now understand how the indoctrination takes place. Because if you frighten, you can't indoctrinate. But if you win them over, and I thought, now I understand, because the television, even on the television, a lot of the dangerous attacks are being lessened. They're not being shown, and you hear more and more of the speakers, except when some of our Muslim representatives in our house have a language problem and they get a little excited. So you have an idea of what they're like. So this is where we are. Now, there's another new trend, and I just want, in doing this, I'm trying to give you a picture of that it's not random. So I started a field of research. Why? Because a parent sent me a fiction book called Nisanit. And it was my first exposure to a beautifully written book by an Arab writer being used in the school system. And it came out of, this one came out of a mother, the child was in an AP history course in Pittsburgh. And she sent it to me and she said, can you do something? I said, what do you want me to do? She said, get it out of the school. So I read it and I analyzed it, and then I went to the principal, and then I went to the librarian, and then I went further, and the next thing is they understood what it was with the indoctrination, and the parents were not afraid. I mean, that's what I was discussing before, about the fear of the parents to intervene because they don't know what's going to happen to their children's grades or what will go on. But when it's a fiction book, and it's one that is indoctrinating in the fact of victimhood of the Palestinians and the oppressors and such, so they pulled the book. So I said, okay, I think I'm going to start a field. And I started a field of research called novels or fiction used for propaganda, indoctrination, and proselytization. I added that because I found out, first of all, and it was a major finding because I grew up, and up until now, we grew up with reading lists, but they were recommended reading. They were recommended. Now I was faced with this literature that was no longer recommended reading. It was required, and it was added onto the textbook, which meant it was considered as truth, and it went on to the exams and such. So I said, okay, now I have 4 Arab books, and suddenly, and the joke about people sending me books in brown paper bags, I got this one from a parent that's how she sent it to me. She said, this is a very bad book. So I read this very bad book, which is called The Bronze Bow, which was exquisite. It was the story of Jesus preaching across the Galilee. It was beautiful, and I read it very, very carefully, and I took it with me to meetings so I could finish reading it, and I said, okay, what is it doing? When I finished with it, I realized that it was proselytizing the superiority of Christianity over Judaism, which Jesus never did. And to put that into his words, what it caused in this was the Bible Belt down south, it caused actual physical assault on the Jewish children in the classroom. So it was a problem. So I said, okay, it's not indoctrination and it's not sanitization, but it is proselytizing, which goes against the Supreme Court ruling of how you use the world religions and literature and such in a classroom. So that gave me this whole new field. And Texas, again through Roy, I got one of these bizarre messages. We're having a problem with a Latin American writer of fiction. Can you look at it? And I'm like, why do you want me to look at it? Because it's dangerous. And I said, what do you want me to do? The same surgery that you did on the other books. So I said, now I'm a surgeon and I take care of nasty fiction. All right, that's fine. But it is a problem because the books are not alarming. They're written beautifully. But they're now used as required reading, which is saying what is presented in this book goes with the information that is being taught in the textbook. When we did the Texas textbooks in TTT, Truth in Texas Textbooks, was my first exposure, and I think it was Roy's first exposure also, to embedded videos. That became the next source of the problem because they're in there, they're embedded videos, they were beautiful, they were sanitized, but they were like years ago when McDonald's did a hamburger commercial on television, and that was the first time anybody said, there's an embedded message in it. And I said, well, they want to sell hamburgers. But that wasn't the message. It was a message, it was embedded in there to get the message out to go and buy their food. So I said, okay, they're paid for a commercial, only then the people explain embedding is not a commercial. there's a whole message about what to eat, what not to eat. So if you fast forward to what we found in the Texas textbooks with the embedded videos, and they're dangerous. So these are things that we are looking at, and if it weren't, this is why I started out with Texas, to say this to you. If it weren't for Texas, I wouldn't know so much of this, and I wouldn't have a State Board of Education that has given me the privilege of reviewing textbooks for the state of Texas. So when I came in with Roy, I was fascinated. People knew me from the State Board of Education, and he said, they're meeting the body now, but they've been looking at your work for years. So I thank Texas because I've learned a lot of things, and so I'm bringing it back. So you have the question of terrorism, the definition of terrorism. It's completely changed in our textbooks in a way that it's based only on political, and that was how 9/11 was explained, that it was political, it was the hatred of Al-Qaeda, and that against the United States politics. And so there isn't anything about the intentional targeting of innocent victims and civilians. Now, sure, I live in Israel. It would be very easy for me to say, you only have to look at what we live with every day, which is the targeting of innocent civilians. I don't have to say, look at Israel, look what's being done over here. Look what's being, and we have lost Americans from that. And some they said, oh, well, they're from the gay community. They are Americans. And one's private lifestyle is not a reason to give life to one and take life away from the other, and it comes under the fact that we are attacking American society. And if we look over at the nightclub bombings in France, we look at all of this and take away targeting of innocent civilians away from terrorism. What is it? What are we left with? We're not left with the word terrorism, and we're not identifying the source of the terrorism. And it's very frightening now in this country that instead of being willing to actually say Islamist terrorism, we are now, yes, there is the right-wing extremist terrorism, but not, thank God, it has not reappeared as it was. And the skinheads are not the same as the Islamists. So, but we are being very, very quick now in bringing out the skinheads and the far right, the alt-right, because that is taking the onus off of the fact that it is Sharia law and it is Islam that is attacking this country. Then in the textbooks, we're now having a battle which we didn't have before. Well, we had a problem, but not a battle. Capitalism versus socialism, that's in the textbooks. And one that Roy had pushed me on because I didn't even know what it meant was U.S. exceptionalism. I didn't know what the word exceptionalism meant theoretically and how to look for it. And Roy taught me what to look for, and I credit that especially because his, can't say his line of work, but this man was from the United States Air Force and a fighter pilot, and he defended me, and he defended what is now my country. And he fought evil. So therefore, I wanted to know what this thing that Roy White wanted me to look like. And I learned from him what it means, U.S. exceptionalism. And now I know how to look at everything we did in World War II, everything we did in Korea, everything we've done around the world, when it disappears and we are an imperialist nation, and we are an empire. I mean, I know that President Trump is bizarre, but he's not the emperor. And he wears clothes, so he's not the emperor with no clothes, and he's the president of the United States, he's not king, regardless of what they've done to him in the media. So I have a big problem with what is in the textbooks when I just found a brand new textbook, which we will get to. It's the same book with Jesus and the Buddha. That we find that U.S. exceptionalism is under attack, and that everything we stand for, everything that's in the Constitution, everything that our Americans have died for, I look at us that we are alive, but I look also on Memorial Day, and I look at the the deaths that are happening to give us the right to be obnoxious. So I say very definitely, now I know what U.S. exceptionalism is, and I'm very conscious of the fact that we are educating generations of young people with no respect for God, no respect for America, no respect for exceptionalism, no respect for education, and no respect for each other. And I always like to add, anyone who does not have respect for someone else has no respect for himself. And so this is how we're growing our people. And then Ken mentioned this Eurocentrism versus Afrocentrism. When you hear that Shakespeare and Chaucer have been removed from the study of literature in college campuses and in English AP, that is not because anyone is anti-Shakespeare or anti-Chaucer. They are destroying very quickly Eurocentrism, and Eurocentrism is exactly what it sounds like. That Europe and the civilization that came out of Rome and came out of Italy and came out of Greece, that goes through all of the countries of Europe, that Eurocentrism is what we have lived on, and it is what our books have taught. It's not for not to exclude other ethnicities and such. But Afrocentrism is, unfortunately, when we use that term, and we think, well, that's fair. We have so many, we have all of so many of the African Americans over here we revolt against being called African Americans. They're Americans. They're black in color and they're they're Americans. But the idea that we are being tolerant and going away from Eurocentrism, which is how our country was formed, to Afrocentrism, which means we accept everyone. We have to remember which countries Afrocentrism takes in, aside from the few African countries, but that is where Islam comes out of. And so what is coming out of Afrocentrism is the replacement of the Eurocentrism, our heritage, the heritage of the founding fathers. Yes, we fought a war called the American Revolution to free ourselves and become free from England, but it didn't free us from Eurocentrism. It just gave us our independence and the right to develop this country, which we did sometimes well and sometimes not so well. So these are problems. And then the Holocaust is a major problem in the textbooks, because we have Islamist Holocaust revisionism, which tells you outright that if it hadn't been for the Holocaust, there would be no state of Israel, and that David Ben-Gurion, actually, what he did was make a pact with Adolf Hitler to let Adolf Hitler take all the Jews in the cattle cars, if the Jews could go over, those that were living in what was called the Yishuv, in the land of Palestine, if they could stay there. Now, that is Islamist Holocaust revisionism at its worst. The fact that it eliminates our birthright, and that eliminates, if it eliminates my birthright as a Jew, it eliminates your birthright as Christians, because it separates Jesus out of the land and it removes all of us from the picture and from where our religions came forth. And our religions did not come out of the mountains, and it didn't come out of the bushes. It came out of a land that was biblically called, it was the kingdom of Israel, it was Canaan. It had all of the names, but it was always Israel. And the only reason that Judea, the name was changed to Palestina, was because the Romans were deathly afraid of the fact that Jesus was called the King of Jews, and if he was to be, with or without being the King of Jews, it meant that it would be a threat to the emperor. And therefore, to destroy any relationship of the Jews to the land of Israel, that is how we got a region called Palestine. It's never been a country. So the Islamist Holocaust revisionism is a major threat. It's a major threat to all of us, in my view. And then, as a Jew, speaking to here and telling you that what concerns me must concern you, and what concerns you has to concern me, what the textbooks have done is to write out now all the contributions of American Jews to American civilization. and American society. We're gone. Something as simple as Emma Lazarus, who wrote the poem at the base of the Statue of Liberty. Something as important as Haym Salomon, who financed George Washington in the American Revolution. Something important to Texans, the history of the city of Galveston and the immigration of the Jews who came out of Europe. Two ports, one in New York, but the ones who traveled across country, the ones who brought their lives over here, they didn't come through New York, they came through Galveston. And Galveston has a long, glorious history that now doesn't exist. So this impacts my life, it impacts your life, because it really, in a way, it separates all of us. And it opens very, very dangerous territory. The civil rights movement. It's eliminated from the books is the fact that there was the Jewish contributions to the civil rights movement. It creates the racism which we don't have, which we do have. And it has given rebirth because coming through the Black Lives Matters movement, too many M's, that happens to be very, very dangerous. And it's very violent. And we have had moments in history with black violence and white violence, and we have been able to work our way through. We're not going to work our way through when the contributions of white Americans to the liberation of the blacks through the end of segregation, the beginning of integration, all of this, when we remove that from the textbooks, we have enemy versus enemy, and then we have the enemy that's trying, I truly believe they're trying to destroy. I know we are a constitutional republic, I've written it a lot of times, but as far as I'm concerned, they're trying to destroy the democracy. And they're trying to destroy our country. And then finally, of major importance to me is that everything in the textbooks has made Israel illegitimate. It was conceived in sin and born in bloodshed. That is the word that comes out. And that is what has been done to this state. So these are trends, and they're troubling, but they're very dangerous. So where did we get them? This didn't start yesterday, and this is what I really want you to have in your mind, that this is what I call the master Arab plan to purchase American education. And when we say, oh, it happened, it's coming down from the colleges, no. It's going in the opposite way, because the Arab plan began targeting K through 12. And when they finished it, it's over in the college campuses. So we have to understand that our youth of America was targeted way before what comes out of the college campus, which are horrendous also. But in 1974, the end of 1974, there was this master plan, came out of Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia made a plan which I feel is brilliant. And I feel that there's a naivete still until today in America. Americans are notoriously trusting, notoriously naive, and open to suggestions. And we want, our military wants, through our presidents, are the peacekeepers of the world. That's good. I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that, but we have a big mess over here right now. But in August 1975, and these are numbers that we have to look at, in August 1975, Saudi Arabia gave $6.4 million. Now, if you look at that amount of money in 1975, that's a tremendous amount of money. And they gave it to California, to the Stanford Research Institute, for the purpose of developing a 5-year plan. And the 5-year plan was to allow them to invest $140 billion in the American education system. And that's the plan, it's provable, we can trace it, but that's what has been done. Now, 1975 and we're 2019, you understand how tremendous the problem is. The first money Saudi Arabia did after that, but Saudi Arabia invested $1 million in the University of Southern California to establish something called the King Faisal Chair of Islamic and Arab Studies. That was the beginning of the birth and growth across this country, from every coast, across the country, of building the Middle Eastern studies, endowing the chairs, and bringing they have the exchange program instituted, bring over. Saudi Arabia was smart. Saudi Arabia did not bring over Saudi Arabian professors. They brought over Saudi Arabian graduate students to study for the master's degree and to study for the doctorate. They put in effect the exchange program for American professors to go to Saudi Arabia to study. There was a caveat that said no Jewish professors. The university said, what Jew in his right mind would want to go to Saudi Arabia? And they accepted the money except for MIT. MIT said no way at that time. I have no idea what they've said since. So all of this, the following year, the first money from Qatar came in. And that is what we have with the money. And it's tremendous money. And the last step is to look at the doctoral programs in the universities that have been receiving money from the Saudis, from Qatar. Yemen, they put in a lot of money. Libya put in a lot of money. But Libya gave money just to Georgetown University. And one wonders, why did they give money, and a lot of money, to Georgetown University? Because their Department of Political Science and International Affairs trains our diplomats for the State Department. So now if you wonder about our State Department, it's not just, the hole in the ozone came over Georgetown University. No, the Arab money, and it didn't filter down. And it's still being invested to this day. Harvard took money just again for teacher study programs. So all of this has gone in. The doctoral dissertations, and I was very blessed to be asked to do as a volunteer 4 years of study of the doctoral dissertations in this country, because Israel needed information to find where the incitement was coming from, and an Israeli professor cannot look at the American education system because it would be meddling in a foreign government. So I wasn't really approached. I was just asked outright, do you love Israel? And I said, yes. Would you do something for Israel? I said, yes. And then I said, maybe I should ask what. I couldn't really see myself as a spy, so I didn't think he was approaching me to join the Mossad, but he could have, because the Council for Academic Affairs at the Consulate of Israel in New York was the one that rescued me at Fordham University when I was blacklisted, so I figured I owe him big time. So I said, what do you want me to do? He said, would you be willing to look at the doctoral dissertations and find out where the incitement is coming from? So for 4 years I did, and I found not only incitement, but I found the doctoral dissertation, the first one, 1980, the first one is 1975. First doctoral dissertation, 1980, the second one, 1990, charting. The first dissertation, charting how to change the presentation of the Arab world and the Arabs from 6 through 12, grade 6 through 12. And with that was to impact how the American government, there you have the link to the State Department, looked at Israel. The second doctoral dissertation in 1990 charted how the money was to be used to impact and change the view of the Middle East in the elite American press. And they targeted the press, and they targeted the spoken word. And so you look now, doesn't happen today, look at CNN, look at the talk radio, look at the New York Times if you have to, look at everything, and what you see is a 5-year plan for a total takeover of the United States education system, which I truly believe has been taken over. But the most dangerous, the anti-Semitism, the anti-Americanism, the anti-democracy that is in all of these doctoral dissertations, the most dangerous to me is the charting of the 6th through 12th grade textbooks and how to change and how to teach the Middle East. Now, when you teach the Middle East, it also is the involvement of the quote-unquote free world, it's the involvement of America. It's certainly to change how America and Americans look at Jews, how they look at the state of Israel. And they did a very good job. So these are the troubling trends, and this is where we get the money from. And this is what we're doing. So I'm going to make you very happy now and talk about 2 books. These are the top of my hate list, of a very long, long hate list, but if I have to go anywhere, driven by total dismay and dislike, I hate Pearson Publishers. For 20 years I've hated them. And I will tell you that if it weren't for Roy White and Truth in Texas textbooks, I would never have had a victory. 20 years to get Pearson to change their material in their world history book on the 6-Day War. And if it weren't for the fact that Roy brought me on to be his academic fellow, and Roy turned me loose to do what I need to know how to do, I will tell you that 20 years of pursuing Pearson through Hadassah, through all of my work, got me nowhere. However, doing it with Truth in Texas textbooks, and now Truth in Textbooks, doing it, I was able to say that the material of the 6-Day War, I was able to take it apart. It was very false, it was very dangerous, but I was able to say that the state of Texas is looking at these books, and that therefore the errors are conducive to anti-Semitism, and the state of Texas is reviewing the book, and the state of Texas will not buy the book. And that was during the textbook review, and I wrote with Roy's permission a very strong review of the book, because there wasn't just one mistake. There were many mistakes. But I was after the fact that every part of history about the Jews has been changed, and it creates tremendous anti-Semitism. But when we finish with anti-Semitism, the anti-Israel backlash is tremendous. And when you create something where you have the 6-Day War, which was a war of extermination, it wasn't a land swap. I mean, it was a war of extermination, and it failed. And in 6 days, there was this miracle where we won. But we won at great, great loss of life. But we also won and then willingly tried to give back land, which then in Khartoum came the 3 no's. No peace, no land, and there's a third one which just went that way. And they would not sit down to speak. There were the 3 no's, and that was, Israel was like, okay, well, we tried to give it back. We've tried to give it back 5 times. And the fact is that if it hadn't been for Truth in Textbooks, Texas textbooks, if it hadn't been for Texas, I don't care what we changed the name to, everything that we have succeeded in, whether it be the Declaration of Independence, everything that we have succeeded to change and we fought has been the state of Texas. And if it weren't for Texas, there would be no changes. And if it weren't for Texas, we would have absolutely no way to fight this. And the biggest friend, and I learned a lesson writing with Roy at the beginning, and we were riding around, and he explained, the 1-star state. And all of a sudden, there's a 1-star state, and there's Israel. And I have 2 flags side by side. And for the first time in my lifetime, there is an ally to Israel that's bigger than the enemy. And that is how I look at Texas, and that is why I come back and I do this work, because for me, my life as a Jew, and my life now as an Israeli, because I now live in Israel and I'm a citizen of both the United States and of Israel, my life in both places would be hell. Because it's here, and it's Texas that has fought for the Jews, and it's here, and it's Texas that has stood up and allowed me to fight for Israel. And so this is something which we do, and we do it very well because there are people, you're sitting here, there are people in the government, there are people who believe that there is a right and a wrong, and there's God, and they're Jews, and they're Christians, and we are allies. And that is really phenomenal when you live as long as I have around what I call being invisible with a big mouth. So I'm lucky that where I'm invisible, I'm heard, and then the body follows. So I want to tell you that in 2017, Pearson Publishers released a book called The Cultural Landscape, An Introduction to Human Geography. It's an AP book. It's one of the finest on the market. It's used in all pre-college high school classes, and it came up for adoption by the state of Texas. And it became one of my causes, and I kept saying to Roy, we have to do this. We have to do this, because on the surface, it's a perfect 9th grade textbook. It's quite beautiful, the pictures, it's very well written. It has beautiful landscape. I'm reading what I wrote here. Implies a broad sweeping landscape presentation of today's world and a basic introduction to the different peoples and their contributions, and it is a very, very impressive textbook until you get to the Jews. And then it is extremely, extremely dangerous. Does it matter to you, if you're not Jewish, that you have a textbook that is anti-Semitic and that teaches hatred and teaches the destruction? Yes, it does. Because under all of this is the attack on the Judeo-Christian tradition upon which this country was formed and is based. And this textbook is very dangerous. And I credit Roy for giving it to me and for letting me run with it. We're hobbled at times, but we did it. We were working with it. But the anti-Semitism, it's what I call visceral. It's not normal. The anti-Semitism in this book, which is a geography book, there you understand how smart Pearson is, because it isn't in world history. It isn't even in American history, where we have a big problem also. But this is a geography book, and it is beautiful to look at. But it is deadly and it's contagious. And it will infect, and it has been doing that, generations of youngsters. Now, what we have here, and I'm reading, because this is my work that I've done for Truth in Textbooks and Truth in Texas Textbooks, and I've done it for Roy with a great deal of love and admiration. We have a type of anti-Semitism, and I want all of us to understand, because I believe that we are us. You destroy the fabric of Judaism, you destroy the fabric of the Jewish community, you destroy the Jews. Soon after follows the Christians. And this is what is happening now, and Roy and I have been looking at this, because now we don't have, in this book, we don't have Judaism as a world religion anymore. It's down in other. It is not the first category of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It has been removed from that, and it is now in the other category. And the other category is quite frightening, because it gives no civil rights. It removes everything that we have done and we are doing to try to build this country. But what it does, and what it has done in this textbook, by removing it into the category of other, it has put two religions against each other. And it's numerically, it's by number. And numbers change by annihilation. They don't change by census. They change by outright slaughter. And what we have and what we're looking at, you remove Judaism as a, quote, they removed it as a world religion, it's an other. Well, it removes the part of the Judeo-Christian tradition of this country. So we look at that and we say, we fought, one of the first battles that Roy and I fought, not against each other, we fought was the removal of the hyphen between Judeo-Christian. I mean, this was a battle, to get the publishing house to understand the importance of a hyphen. It's just a hyphen. I said, no, it's not just a hyphen. It means it's the equality. This country was formed by people much smarter than the publishing houses. Our founding fathers had understood Judeo-Christian tradition of this country. That is the heritage upon which we are built. Took a long time to win that battle of the hyphen, but it is a question. So with this book, with Judaism now belonging to the category of other, with Spiritualism and Juntaism and such isms, and you have up there Christianity and Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism. So we can put Buddhism and Hinduism because they're being eliminated by slaughter in the countries. So we have to watch that numerically. But when you look at Christianity and Islam as the first two religions, numerically, and this is what I get very excited about, not positively, but I get very upset that the Christians in this country do not care. And I say, well, how can you not care? What you do not understand about the outright slaughter by the Muslim world. I'm trying to put it into a politically correct term, and it's not coming to my head at the moment. But what do we not understand? That there is a very fine numerical difference between the number of Christians and the number of Muslims in the world, and that the slaughter that is going on across the world now of Christian communities, and we don't care what color the Christian communities are, we care that Christianity is being eradicated, and we have to overlook the problem that we need to become the white, and that's another problem we have, of being whites, because the newer people elected to Congress really have no care for, they don't like white people. So we have to just forget about that problem and realize that the fact that we don't stand up for our own, and the difference in the numbers between those that are Christians and those that are Muslims, the number is shrinking because we have outright slaughter of Christians that the Christians in this country and the Jews in this country are not responding to. And to think that it will never happen here, maybe the type of slaughter that's going on in Africa, it's now moving over through Europe because we have that. It's happening here in small numbers. It'll go to Latin America. Because 3 years ago, we said, okay, I said and Roy said, go for it, that Judaism is a world religion, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, that will be the end of that development. It started with the disappearance of the hyphen between Judeo-Christian. That wasn't just a typographical error. We went through that in plenty of the books. It's not a typographical error. The intelligence that has been put into the war can be the type that we have with attacks. It can be with the bombings. It can be all of that. But the war inside of education has been stylistic. It has been very gradual. You remove the hyphen between Judeo-Christian tradition of the United States. You remove the history of this country. You remove everything, excuse me, that this world, this country was founded on. So we have a major problem. So the textbook, this textbook, is very, very dangerous.
What was the name of it again?
Okay, it's Pearson Publishers, The Cultural Landscape, An Introduction to Human Geography. 9th grade, and in use in Texas, used across the country. And it's very, very dangerous. But this is what the message I bring. I'm not bringing this as a message as a Jew. I'm bringing it as a message as a scholar and as an American. And I come from the Judeo-Christian tradition. And I don't really care. I say this very honestly. I fought a losing battle with a professor from Georgetown University, who his name is Professor Antelis, and he wants to make it the Judeo-Christian-Islamic tradition of America. No, all right, we're saying no here. This is fine, but to engage people in battles like this, it is tremendous, because people just look, well, what's a hyphen mean? What does a hyphen mean? It means Judeo-Christian are united. And I said, it doesn't mean that we are teaching and we're trying to change the beliefs and impose Judaism on Christianity or Christianity on the Jews. It means that we are the founding religions upon which the democracy of this country was based. And that our founding fathers were smart enough to read many languages, and therefore we have a Judeo-Christian tradition. But we now have something completely different. And this is where it has become extremely dangerous. So we have here, and this I'm just looking down because these are my notes, and I want you to listen about this textbook. When it is adopted, its message will be that it teaches a subtler version of anti-Semitism by removing the Romans from any responsibility in the death of Jesus. It presents a revisionist chronology of the development of world religions. This is my material that I've written. That is to say, what does that mean? Chronological order is disturbed. It isn't disturbed, it's changed. It has become Christianity, Islam, and then Judaism. Now, with what has been going on, we are now finished that era in our textbooks. Judaism is no longer the opening world religion upon which the other religions grew. But we now have the battlefield, and the battlefield is in the textbooks. The battlefield is not really out on the street yet. So we're not looking at we could eventually look at warfare in the streets of America. We've had it before. But right now, what we are looking at is Christianity and Islam and the Buddhism and the Hinduism, and those two are under attack just in the textbooks, but that doesn't destroy the fabric of America. So when you say that the Romans are removed for any responsibility in the death of Jesus, when you're looking at the chronology of the world religions which grew, Judaism, Christianity, and then Islam was a tag-along. Islam took what it wanted, and it made the religion, and it made it with the tenets of Judaism and the tenets of Christianity as taken and put into the Quran are probably the most destructive of our ability to live, whether it is in this country or elsewhere. So that is that. And then we have completely the misrepresenting of the tenets of Judaism. And then what has happened is they have made an inequality of the number of pages. And it doesn't sound like it's any big deal, but the number of pages given to Judaism, given to Christianity, the level of the book that it's in through junior high school, and most pages given to Islam in the high school books. So we're looking at all of that. And when we're looking at that, we are looking at the end of our civilization. And that is something that we have to understand. Because when I look at the textbooks, I'm looking for two religions and what's happening. I'm looking at Judaism and I'm looking at Christianity. I know what's happened to Judaism. Now the fear in front of me is what is happening to Christianity. And to talk about that is something which we have to talk about. And that is this book, because this textbook has the four largest religions: Christianity first, Islam second, Hinduism, and Buddhism. It's not the progression of how the religions develop. It's not the progression. When it's Judaism and Christianity, this is how the civilization in America was born. The founding fathers did not look at Islam to figure out how to run this country. So we have a major problem in the history of how this country grew. So then this textbook does Christianity and Islam as we projected it, and I'm looking at boys standing back there because we've gone through this over and over again. As you project the number of Christians slaughtered, and we have to understand that we are not looking just at white Christians. We are looking at the Christians of Africa that are being slaughtered. We are looking at Christian communities across the Middle East that are being decimated. They are different colors than we are. They have different languages than we are. But they are the founding fathers and they belong in the religion. So when we look at that, and this is something which we have to look at, we have to care enough that the Christian communities in the Middle East are being decimated. And they're being decimated because what is being done is that Islam is preparing itself to return to the way it was when it went into Europe. It's of major importance to us that we understand that there's going to be very soon the flip in the numbers between the Christians and Christianity and Islam. And yes, Roy was talking to me about the number of those leaving Islam. There will never be enough to compensate, because if 10 leave, 200 Christians will be killed. So you can be sure that the balance of power and the slaughter of the Christians, which we don't seem to pay much attention to because they're different colors, they're different ethnicities, but the communities are really taking a beating. And I, unfortunately, from doing this for so many years, I'm very worried about the Christian communities in America. Because two things: some of them are being taken out of Christianity and are being proselytized. And the ones that are in the prisons that are being proselytized and then they come out, they have the violence of the Arab civilization. So we have that we have, proselytization is one way or the other. I mean, I don't really want the Jews to be proselytized and I lose Jews. I definitely don't want the Christians to be proselytized and we lose each other, because no matter how we differ, it's the Judeo-Christian tradition, and basically at the bottom of the day and the end of the day, that's what we are. But we have the four religions: Christianity, which is under assault, and unfortunately, in my vision, this is going to be within 2 years' time. It'll be Islam first and Christianity second. So this is one book, and the other book, because Roy's going like this to me, so I pay attention to Roy, and then I look down. In 2008, I'm sorry, Roy.
It's okay. Throw me underneath the bus, Sandra. That's okay.
That's fine. I would never.
I'm just kidding.
No, but I'm telling these people, if you want to know something, that he has made the most tremendous difference in my life. I'm a scholar, I'm a university professor. I met him, and I have never been the same as an academic since I met Roy White, because he has opened a world. One can do books, and I'm a university professor and I teach, but to come and mentor and to come and try to protect Judaism and try to be able to protect Christianity, to try to protect this country, because now we have two countries, and it's the Judeo-Christian concept of the Judeo-Christian tradition, but that's America and that's Israel. And so I look at it that way. And when I see what is being done to the Christians around the world, and with Roy, I have a podium now, and I correct textbooks, and I get very upset, but I do very good work, as Roy will say. But he has opened a world of protection, of how to protect through education, because I am a university professor, I'm an educator. And that is why this is of paramount importance. And so the second book, which is Bedford St. Martin's Company, 2016, called Ways of the World, A Global History. And I'm going to close. I've got 2 pages that are the same, so I will turn them this way. I was wondering why I was so thick. I got 2 copies of this thing. Boy, I was busy. So I'm going to close with this book, because this book is the future of both the Jews and the Christians in this country. And it's very dangerous. We can say all we want, this is America, but it is not the America that we know. And until we understand that. This book, Ways of the World, A Global History, and it's an AP book, an advanced placement book. Judaism is omitted completely as a world religion. And it's very, very dangerous. That's the first thing. And it says Judaism is a world religion. Nothing so drastic. And Pearson is the worst publishing house we've had to deal with. This is even worse, because it says, but some things persist even if they also change. We should not allow an emphasis to change to blind us to the continuities of human experience. They have written out Judaism, and I'm going to read you this. It's a little paragraph so that you know what it is that, whether it's our children, our grandchildren, it doesn't matter whether the children in school are our bloodline. They are our bloodline as Christians and as Jews and as Americans. And so to me, it doesn't matter when someone says, oh, you have children in the school system. I said, at my age, if I have children in the school system, I have a big problem. No, all of these are my children, because this is my country. And so this one says, a recognizably Chinese state has operated for more than 2,000 years. Slavery and patriarchy persisted as human institutions for thousands of years until they were challenged in recent centuries, and in various forms they still exist. The teachings, and listen to what is now in this book, the teachings of Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. They have endured for centuries with variations and with transformations. Judaism is gone as a religion. The order, if you look at it, the order in this book is Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. It's the rewriting of the history, but with Judaism gone, it takes no time. And believe me, and I'm saying this as a scholar, and as a Jew, and as part of the Christian world of America, that when you write out the Jews and Judaism from the textbook, the next ones to go, and it sounds like Christianity and the Christians, and you have you have Islam at the very top. And do not ever believe that this is not happening. It is not only going to happen, it is happening in textbook after textbook after textbook. And when you have that, when you have the assault on the Jews and on the Christians, you have the domination of one world religion. And if we look at one world religion, we are talking about Islam. And Islam is taking what they never conquered. And when you look at this country, the inroads are formidable. And if we don't speak up, our children will never speak up, because they are being taught this. This is what they're being taught for years already in the school system. this is the problem that we have. And then we have completely anti-Eurocentrism. What does that mean? It means that Eurocentrism, that we came out of Europe, all of that, it's gone. We are now looking at the Arab world in large terms. And we have anti-American, and this concerns me. Yes, the religion concerns me. Christianity concerns me. Judaism concerns me greatly. But our textbooks are now teaching anti-American exceptionalism. And it's something that we have to understand, that the way it's being taught in our schools and in these books is going to lead very easily to a type of revolution that we've never seen, because it has inroads into our young people. It has inroads that our seniors, it isn't that they don't know, it's that they don't want to. There's this thing about don't shake anything, don't make any trouble. Well, we have not made trouble for so long. The trouble is devouring us. And this book, you have this intrinsic anti-American exceptionalism. They are anti. And they wrote, this is the quote that I want to end with, because this is something which we have to deal with. This is teaching in 9th grade AP, Advanced Placement. The worst books are the books that are most important, because they target our smartest young people. So, and they are written in a style which I find to be really extraordinary as a person in education. It's just the content. But the textbooks that are in use, and this book in particular, the Bedford Martins, Are We Rome? The title of a thoughtful book published in 2007 asking what had become a familiar question in the early 21st century. Is the United States the new Roman Empire? That is what is being asked and being taught. With the collapse of the Soviet Union by 1991 and the subsequent invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, some commentators have begun to make the comparison. The United States, now you find this is bashing, if you want a nice, polite word. This is anti-Americanism that permeates the American school system, where it was only in high school. It's down at the junior high school, and it's now down as low as the 5th and 3rd grades. And it is frightening, because this is what is said about our country. And it is our country, and we're not fighting for it. And fighting for it does not mean to go to war. Somebody has to understand that we have to take up the cudgels against what is going on in American education. As this book says, with the collapse of the Soviet Union by 1991 and the subsequent U.S. invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, some commentators have begun to make the comparison. The United States' enormous multicultural society, its technological achievements, its economically draining and overstretched armed forces, its sense of itself as unique and endowed with a global mission, its concern about foreigners penetrating its borders, its apparent determination to maintain all military superiority. This has invited the comparison to the Roman Empire. And this is dangerous, to compare the United States of America to the Roman Empire. The supporters of the dominant role for the United States argue that Americans must face up to their responsibilities as the, quote, undisputed master of the world, as the Romans did in their time. Critics, and this is a comparison between the United States and the Roman Empire, critics warned that the Roman Empire became overextended abroad and corrupt and dictatorial at home and then collapsed. They are now suggesting a similar fate for the United States Empire. Now, these are the words in the textbook. These are they're very difficult to look at. They're very dangerous to respond to. And basically, the United States now equals the Roman Empire, which died and fell apart. So this is something which we have to understand. And then, speaking to you, and I'm just going to finish with one sentence, I promise. I would like to, oh, he's smiling at me. I never did anything in one sentence, I know. I would like to tell you that it is our responsibility, that means whatever our religion is, that we fight together the destruction of the belief and the questioning of the belief of Christianity in our textbooks. Because this is the Judeo-Christian tradition of this land. You fight for what's in the book about the Jews. We fight what is in the book about the Christians. But together, what must be done, and we must understand, that it doesn't take military strength to destroy a nation. The strength of this nation was always based, with all of its problems, but it was always based on the Judeo-Christian tradition of this land. That's where the morality came from. That's where the sense of right and wrong came from. That is where the sense of Americans going overseas to fight, whether what world war, to come to the aid of nations that are in distress. This is something which we have to understand. And where we stand right now, the Judeo-Christian tradition has been obliterated in the textbooks by eliminating Judaism to the other category, and to making this country Christian, Islamic, Hindu, and Buddhism, and Buddhist. Because the next thing that we are looking at, and we have to understand that we, when I say we, meaning the Jews and the Christian Jewish community united, that we lost millions of people in World War II. We lost generations in the concentration camps. We didn't lose them in the textbooks. Now we are out of many of the textbooks. We are reduced to the other category. And watching that, the Judeo-Christian tradition of this country is under assault. And Judaism, the practice of Judaism and the practice of Christianity cannot be basically, you put up your Christmas tree, we put up our Hanukkah menorah, and hallelujah, we're Jews and Christians, and that's the end of it. That's not even the beginning of it. What is in the textbooks today, and this is the message that I'm giving you twofold. Age makes no difference for involvement. There is a war going on for our country. There's a war going on for our civilization. There's a tremendous war to destroy Judaism, and there's a very big war to destroy Christianity in this country. And it is up to us not to say that person can go and fight this. This is not battles in the street. This is where the American brain has always been very strong. The American ability to study and to read. The American ability to speak up. They say to speak up for the underdog. I'm just going to end with one sentence. You are now the underdog. And we have to do something about that before we are written out of history in the United States. Because if you look at the invasion of Europe, Christianity, Judaism, the Jews that are smart enough are leaving because there's no future. But what's the future for the Christians? And this is something we have to look at. And we have to look at it very carefully, because America, when they say America the brave and America this and America that, we need to put our face forward and admit finally that the United States of America is in danger. And we're in big danger, not from revolutions on the street. And this is why I do the work that I do, and I make Lord crazy, it makes me crazy. We are in danger through education And the education was supposed to be the strength that grows us and grows the nation. So what I'm asking you is take the education back before we cannot take it back. And your heritage as Christians, it's critical to this country, like my heritage as a Jew is critical to this country. So this is what I hope I've done. This is my...
As you can tell, Sandra is a college professor who has a difficult time stopping from talking. But I want to close with kind of fixing what Sandra is talking about. You walk out of here and you hear all this, well, what can I do? I'm living in freaking San Angelo, and how can I really have an impact? In 2023, Texas will begin to review social studies textbooks. We did that in 2013 and 2014. We've trained over 200 people from around the country to be social studies textbook reviewers, and I will tell you, all of you that are in here could be reviewers, because our folks look and come from the same backgrounds that you do. They don't have the college degrees like Sandra. They're PE majors like me, or other folks who are, not flashy, not smart, but they're well read, and they can follow the process, because the publishers aren't really creative about the errors they put in there. They put the same errors. So we train you. We give you the process, and it's all online, about 5.5 hours of training through YouTube videos. We give you the skill sets, we give you the information, and then with that information, come 2023, you think, well, gosh, that's a long time from now. Now's the time where we will practice. We will get you up to speed. It's not something that's going to take hours and hours and days, but we can get you trained, because you can't put a fire out if you haven't trained the folks beforehand. It's too late then to call, we need volunteers. We need volunteers now, and we're going to use those people we've trained, and we're going to come 2023, instead of reviewing 32 textbooks, we only review the third. We'll review 100 textbooks in about 2 or 3 months period of time. And doing that, instead of finding 1,500 errors in the textbooks and getting 60% of them corrected, we'll probably find 4,000 text errors and get 60 to 70%. And that will have an impact on your child, your children's children, and the children in Indiana and Idaho, wherever they buy these other books. If you are interested in doing that, tnt.textbooks@gmail.com. Ken will have our email address, send it out to you, or come up to me afterwards and I'll be happy to give you it. It's tnt.textbooks@gmail.com. Just write in the subject line, interested in being a reviewer. We'll have you do a survey, we'll get you set up for the training, give you the link to the videos, and you can do it at your own pace. There's some homework assignments. You'll work with Sandra, you'll work with our other folks, and all of that process will get you up to speed. And then you can do something. And let me leave you with 2 very good pieces of news. The fastest growing evangelical Christian church in the world is in Iran. 20% evangelical Christian, because the Islamic movement there has gone away. We see all the people on TV, but Christians, there's thousands of home Christian churches there. And the second fastest evangelical Christian church in the world, growth, is in Afghanistan, 19%. The Holy Spirit is working through so many people, because we've been negligent as Christians in going out to the world. 1/3 of Muslims who have converted to Christianity have come to Christianity because of dreams. That's not because you and I, because we've been staying here, and others, we haven't been going to those missions, but God's moving those people, but we still need to do that, and they're here in America now, and we don't need to turn our back on them. We need to have relationships with our Muslim neighbors. We need to have relations with and show them, because the number one reason why Muslims leave their faith is because they met a Christian that treated them like they've never been treated before. And isn't that always the case? That's what Jesus said. Treat them like your brother. Treat them like you would want to be treated. Not fearful. And that means stepping out in faith. I want to thank Ken. I'm sorry Kat's not here. Kat's been just a marvelous resource for us. I know for San Angelo, but around the state and around the country. You don't know, or you probably do know what a jewel she is, but Ken and Mary and their team of folks here, we can't thank them enough. So I just want to say thanks to Ken for having us out. Thanks to Sandra coming all the way from Jerusalem. I'll turn it over to Ken, and again, thanks a lot for everybody. And Truth in Textbooks at .com is our website. I didn't bring my cards tonight, that's my bad, but Ken, here's your mic.
First, I want to thank Dr.
Alfonsi.
I did just say Sandra's.
Okay, we'll thank Sandra for a very enlightening presentation. Also, Roy, for Truth in Textbooks. The movement is extremely important, as I think you all know by now. I'd also like to pass some buckets, and we'll take a love offering for this evening. And then, if anybody has any questions, do we want to do an open forum or just come up and talk to Sandra?
Yeah, if you got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I know, and I feel like if you need to go, then feel free to do that. I'll be happy to
Let's
answer any questions. Anybody have any questions off the top of your head? Yes, ma'am.
What's your job?
I'm the CEO, founder and president of Truth in Textbooks. My day job, I used to be I was in the military for 20 years and got hired by Southwest Airlines. And I flew for Southwest Airlines as a captain for about 19 years, turned 65 in April, and now I fly for another company, flying around the country. God's been able to give me an opportunity to do another job that I love, and that's flying airplanes. So that's what I do. So when I'm not doing that, I'm doing textbooks and 8 grandkids and a few other things with a wife for 40 years and still puts up with my foolishness. Yes, ma'am.
What about the teaks?
Yes.
I reviewed teaks in, 2014, I guess.
20.
For elementary social
Yep.
study. And my issue is that the teaks are driving the textbooks, they're driving
Yep.
the curriculum. Also, if you speak with the superintendent and the curriculum specialist, they should have curriculum for you to go view online.
Yes.
Because they promised me that they're doing that.
Well, you're exactly right. The publishers don't just come up with their content. They come to the state and say, what are you going to test? And so they begin to lay out the Texas Essential Knowledge Skills, the acronym is TEACS. Those become, what's going to be tested on and what the state tests are designed for. The books are then written to contain that information. But only the books, consist of about 30%. And this is just in social studies, but it's the same thing for all. The books, about 30% of the content is covering those TEACS. But the other 70% is whatever else they want to put in there. But this time around, the last time we had state board members who were very good about keeping the TEACS in there. We fought in November of last year they were trying to change some of the TEACS. And some of those were directly dealing with the issues that Sandra was talking about. We fought very hard to keep those issues in there. We expect that battle to continue in 2022 when they will lay out, bring people in, bring consultants, and those consultants, are not always your friends. So you can volunteer to serve on those committees. So when the announcements comes out, hey, we're looking for volunteers. They oftentimes look for teachers, but we're encouraging them to have parents and others to be participants in that. So the community has a say in what's going to go in the textbooks. So we got in it too late to just do anything with the TEACS, but fortunately, Texas has some of the strongest social studies TEACS around, K through 12. So
They were horrible, though.
Huh?
They were horrible.
They were horrible, but they fought.
They've gotten better.
They've gotten better. But we can always improve them, and that's kind of where we've worked with people around the country. We've been in California, Florida, North Carolina, other places doing exactly what we're doing here. So this is a national effort, and we're teaming up with other groups around the country. We have to have. It's okay to do this work, but we have to have people to go to the local school district and say, here's the content, here's the page and the paragraph, and we put a grade on all the books. We either grade them good, acceptable, poor, or crappy, actually unacceptable. I would rather use some other words, but they won't let me, so we just say unacceptable. And so you as a local citizen can go to your school board and say, here's a book that has this many errors in it, it's rated as unacceptable, would you go to a doctor that has that kind of rating? So why are you putting that in my kids' brains, or my grandkids' brains? You're an elected school official, we're gonna have and if you're thinking of running for office, this is a great tool to use, because if that school board member voted for these books, then you can run a campaign that says, they voted for books that said exactly what Sandra said. I mean, who's gonna vote for someone who has that kind of information, that approved of those books? You don't have time to read all those books. We've done it. And we give you that ammunition, so when you go before a local school board, you can hammer the daylights at it. And it's page and paragraph, you just point to it. And then we give you the correct information and the sources of the documents. So,
And you need to know your State Board of Education representative.
and who is the state?
Marty.
Oh, Marty is yours?
Yeah.
Yeah, Marty's a good man. I mean,
No.
oh, well, he's helped us. I mean, he has supported, Marty was helping us on this. I mean, he may not be good in every area, but when we came to fight the social studies stuff, Marty stood up.
I like Marty, but he's not good on math.
Well, you know,
Math is
neither am I, but I'm not the
Now,
guy.
it's Common Core math.
Well, yes, but from a social study, I'm just saying, from a social study standpoint, we fought that battle. And he supported us, and because it's about a 10-to-6 ratio between Republicans and Democrats. And not every Republican supports. You're very kind to stick around this long. If you've got any other questions, I'll be happy to entertain them. Anybody else?
What's Marty's last name? I'm giving you his phone number, just a second.
Yeah.
It's a private number.
There you
But
go.
I didn't get my phone back.
That's okay. Marty's last name is, yeah, Marty Brown, that's right.
Marty what?
Bradley. Raleigh, excuse me.
I'm spelling.
Anyone else? Yes.
What about textbooks that are online and
Yes.
therefore the parents are not?
Exactly, and Florida passed a law, and I think it's something we've got to get in our state legislation, and this is one of the things we've been trying to do, is they pass a law that says any citizen, not just parent, but any tax-paying person should be able to walk into a school and says, I want to see your textbooks, I want to see the instructional material, and about 50% of what teachers use these days are not the textbooks, but their instructional materials off that they download, and there needs to be some sort of legislative process and put in place that teachers can't just go in and pull stuff that's not been reviewed, has not been a part of the approved process. Teachers want to have some freedom, I understand that, but at the end of the day, your doctor doesn't have an opportunity to go off and just pull something off the shelf or go to the internet and says, I think this is really a good idea, I want you to take it. You expect that to be approved by the FDA and everything else. There's no approval process, it's just whatever I want to teach. So we looked at online material, because Sandra talked about some of the online books, and we found in one of the textbooks, because it clicked the link, it went to an online mentor for a 5th grade textbook. And we asked, and the publisher's sitting right there, and we asked them, said, well, who's at the end of that? Who's responding to that? Some guy on a work release program, or you got any ideas? And they didn't know who it went to. That book got voted off the item for obvious reasons, because they never expected anyone to go up there and really challenge them. So that's kind of, but we had people that looked just like you who walked up there and says, I reviewed this textbook, I looked on this page, this paragraph, this is what it says. And time after time, the publishers were, the representatives were there with their mouths wide open, and the school board looked at it and said, well, is that true? Well, I haven't looked at the book either, but I guess they say it's that way. Well, you need to fix it. That's why they turn, but you've got to have that kind of level of detail. But we'll teach you how to get that level. So Sandra was very kind in the words to me, but all of those words go to the 50 reviewers. 50 reviewers changed what 5 million children in the state of Texas are using right now and are going to use for the next 5 years. 50 people, about, just a few more than what's in this room. That, and when you consider how many states purchased those textbooks from Texas because they purchased the same ones, that's closer to 20 to 30 million kids. all because of what 50 people did over the course of about 3 or 4 months. And that's not about me, that's about those nameless volunteers, and we never give their name out. They're just volunteers just like you. They work with a group of other folks. You don't have to do it by yourself, you do it online. And if you think, hey, I'm not computer literate, how many of you can send an email? Raise your hand. Can you send an email? Can you upload a picture? Raise your hand. Can you download a picture? Great, you just volunteered to be a reviewer. Keep your hand. You see those. That, there. Yes, ma'am. Does that answer your question?
All of the reviewers work with me.
Yeah,
One
exactly.
collects
You're not going to do it by yourself.
The mock reviews and the final reviews, and then in the protection of my reviewers, my name goes on everything.
That's right.
But just that when we train them, but they are my pleasure and my responsibility, not always in that order.
The state puts out a bid, anyone can bid toward that. You know, any publisher. And Pearson has about 30 different companies under their label that don't always, they don't always come out and show that they're Pearson. And actually Pearson now has sold their public school K through 12 textbooks to another group, but they're still using all those 30 names, you know, in different companies. We've kept track of that. And here's the other crazy thing. There's not a high school student or middle school student who, if they submit a term paper or any kind of research paper, and if they don't put sources down there, bibliographies, that teacher's going to say, you got a big 0, mister, which is what I used to get all the time. But not a single one of these textbooks you will find footnotes or sources of where this material is coming from. So when San Angelo plays football out here, if their coaches, their home team gets to call the ball, you know, the offsides, they're going to win a lot of games. And the textbook publishers get to determine what the truth is. So they can put whatever they stinking want in there and call it the truth until you have folks like Dr. Alfonsi and our 50 volunteers call them out on the carpet. So that's hopefully why they do it, is because the state asks for it and they don't ban them. Now we've made a big point of saying we think any textbook publisher who submits should be a US-based publisher. That's not been the case. But again, that's a legislative thing, and we're trying to get the state board to view it, because they don't have to do legislation to make that happen. So we're working with some of our school state board members to try to get some of these initiatives going. So, but again, we're a small group, but we're teaming up with some other groups, but we have to have volunteers out and around the various places. So it's got some time, but we need your help. Yes,
When
ma'am.
I do the training, so you don't have to be afraid. I train.
Yeah.
I train my people.
Yes, ma'am. Your question?
So I understand that the TEA head, wants to rewrite the health policy
Yeah.
in 2020, is that right?
That's probably the right time frame. I've heard they're coming up.
So is that something you'll be watching?
Negative, Tyra, because my wife, I like my current wife, and she has told me, you know, you want to stay in the lane of social studies, that's great, but to do all that, I have to go out and find the Sandra Alfonsis of the health world and go out and volunteer and find all that. So it's outside the scope. If somebody else, if you're raising your hand to volunteer, then let me have your name and number, and we'll make you the Roy White, and we'll get you all lined up for help. And thank you for volunteering. God bless you. So, but same thing for language arts or any of the others. Yes, ma'am.
Do you see any of this creeping into the homeschool curriculum? I mean, there's a lot of courses, curricula out there now.
It's
for
always
homeschoolers
going to
that-
creep, and it goes into the parochial schools. We had some Jewish schools that, you know, they found out what was in their textbooks after we pointed out that what Sandra had done to them. They were shocked. Why would a Jewish school have anti-Semitism textbooks in their school? Only because they hadn't looked at the book. They just had someone said, hey, this is a good book. But from a homeschooling standpoint, you know, that's the power of homeschooling. You know, there's a network of people talking, and those books aren't hidden. They're out there in the public view very easily. Trying to get a book, we had a parent who had to file a Freedom of Information request in Austin to get what the teachers was teaching in her child's 6th grade or 7th grade class. I mean, I mean, that's wrong on so many levels.
I go up to school every day, so.
Anyway, yes, ma'am.
One of the first things Sandra said was it was a violation of law for parents not to know the curriculum.
It's not, in some states it is. For example, in Florida, they have to have access to that information. You know, but in the state of Texas, it's, you know,
It's not.
no, they just have to make it available, and local school boards have to publish that. But what they publish and the level of content and how easy it is to find it. I mean, that's the other thing. That's a real problem, because a lot of them play I've got a secret because they don't want to expose their works. They don't want to expose it. The teacher, even though if I had a parent, if I had a child, I would want to know the material, and oftentimes some teachers are very good about listing what they're teaching, they show their calendar, what subjects are going to be covered, and they may even have, you know, and they should have what the students are going to be using that is not approved versus what they pulled offline. Those are all the kind of questions you have to ask if you want to stay engaged. But again, to answer your question specifically, there's no Texas law that requires that, you know, they have to approve or that the material is provided to the parents. They can request it, but it has to be posted publicly so the curriculums are out there.
But the Freedom of Information Act is what our weakness is. It's there, and you don't have the number of people that, it's not, I can say that they don't care. It's an involvement that takes more than a few minutes to be involved in, but the Freedom of Information Act is the tool by which.
But it should be, and that's why Florida went to passing it and saying, you are required by law to provide it, and they've made it difficult, and they're rewriting the law, because they said, well, you can only come in from 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock, we'll put you in a room, you can't take the book with you, you can't make any copies. Okay, well, just go ahead and put a stick in my eye and tell me you don't want me to do it. You know, why, you know, this is just kind of crazy. But they're going to tighten up that law and put very specific stipulations about what the schools, you know, have to do. Yes, Mary?
Just a point of fact, one of our school board members said that her son requested a textbook to take home. So that opens the door for any one of you all that have somebody who has a friend that has somebody in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, say, ask for, you need a geography or world history book to take home to study with. And if the school says, no, you can't, well, how come the school board member's child was able to? You put them on the spot.
Or go to local PTA, you know, get the parents all involved.
Yeah.
I have to answer on this question, because one of the biggest weaknesses happens to be the number of different editions that are handed out to take home. So we came up against 5 editions of one textbook. Some were at the school, some were in the backpacks. So you have to be very specific when we start to do that, because
but it's a start.
that was a major problem that we had.
Yeah, but it's
I never
a
saw
good
somebody
approach,
else do that.
and write to us, and we can tell you the questions you need to ask, because we've done this a bunch. Yes, sir.
Well, when I was in high school.
Or a couple of years ago. Yeah, a couple of years ago.
I took all my books home.
Exactly.
What's changed?
That was, well, money. They don't have enough books to give to everybody.
I had books from home.
There you go. Well, and that was 20 years ago. So it's gotten a lot. Schools don't have that. I mean, how many different languages? I mean, gets into the immigration. How many different languages, foreign languages, are being have to have interpreters here in San Angelo? In Amarillo, where there is a large immigration population, it's over 50. 50. And at average price of $75,000 per translator, there goes your books. And that's by federal law, you've got to have people to speak those languages. And you've got, and that would be a question I would ask you, how many foreign languages, how many translators is San Angelo paying for? And that's a cost of doing business that I'll be willing to bet you they weren't doing it when I was there. And probably up until about 10 or 15 years ago, it wasn't even a budgeted item. Maybe Spanish, probably so. But now, you got
Back to English.
That's why they have to
there you go. Folks, thanks so much. Y'all been great. Again, thank you, Cap.